This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social, and I'm delighted now to be joined by Eddie Hearn. Eddie, how are you?
Good, mate. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks. We're down here today for the announcement of Dereck Chisora and Dillian Whyte. Just talk to me about why this fight seemed to take that bit longer to make.
Probably because they can't stand each other. Took a long time to make, a long time, because we've been looking at it since July 28. So David Haye probably helped actually, because I think sometimes it's good to get someone with a level head come in and say, look, don't lose this fight. And we nearly lost the fight a couple of times. So good to get it over the line. I've seen a few people talk about like this fight, gimmick fights and table throw-in, and please watch the first fight. It was one of the best heavyweight fights of all time. And you're going to get the 13th round kick-off December 22nd. And I can't wait.
I was going to come on to that. The first fight, a lot's been made about it. Do you think it's adding more pressure to the fighters to try and deliver a similar fight and to live up to those expectations?
I just think that sometimes fighters can freeze in situations and too much pressure. These fighters don't freeze. They've been on the big stage before. Let's just think about it from a boxing sense. What else can they do other than come out and have a war? It's not like Dereck's going to box off the back foot or Dillian's going to try and be slippery and awkward. They're just going to go at it. And that's why it's a massive fight, because, like I said, it's round 13, basically. It's all going to go off again. And I think they're going to bring more ability, a better engine. I think they're going to throw more punches. And I think you're going to see an even better fight.
So what is your prediction for the fight itself? I mean, just to add to that, there seems to be a lot of pressure on both fighters with regards to Dillian loses. He's got a long way to rebuild to get back to world level contention. And if Dereck loses, where does he go from here?
I think the big pressure's on Dillian, because he didn't have to take this fight, but he loves to fight. And, he could have sat out like other people who are WBC mandatories, Whyte-Breazeale, these kind of guys, just having little steady fights. Dillian keeps throwing himself in the mix to have these big fights, and there's a lot of pressure on him going in this fight. But both guys are coming off career best wins. Dillian against Parker and Chisora against Takam. So I just think it's going to be a brutal fight, and I don't think it'll go 12 rounds this time.
You've just mentioned Breazeale. When we was in Newcastle for Rickton, I asked you, what names was you looking at? Breazeale and Ortiz were mentioned. I put a clip out on Twitter, onto our social media, and in that clip you said that the British public and the fight that they would want to see is Whyte-Chisora. The feedback we was getting was complete opposite, and they'd have rather have seen Dillian versus either Luis Ortiz or Breazeale as a second choice. What are your thoughts on that?
That boxing social is not the British public. It's a hardcore boxing community. So let me ask you a question. What do you think does more buyers? Chisora against Whyte or Whyte against Ortiz? If you say Whyte against Ortiz, you have zero understanding commercially. Sorry. I'm sorry to educate these people. And I saw it on my social media, because these are the people with the voice. These are the boxing fans. And I understand from a boxing fan's point of view, maybe some do prefer Whyte against Ortiz. But mate, from a mass market, from a casual fan's point of view, from the man walking down the street, most of them don't even know who Luis Ortiz is outside of the boxing community. So this does double the buyers that an Ortiz fight would do. So that's called demand. That's called interest. That's called fan preference. So if you go out to the British public and you say, who do you want Dillian Whyte to fight? Luis Ortiz or Dereck Chisora? What do you honestly think across a mass section of the public they are going to say? They don't know who Luis Ortiz is. If you ask the boxing hardcore fans what they would prefer, Ortiz may win the race. We're not just here for the boxing hardcore, because if you do that, you won't have a business and you will not grow the sport of boxing.
So is that what the decision effectively comes down to then, what you could sell as a promoter?
Of course. What's the biggest fight? What makes the fighters the most money? How many pay-per-view buys you're going to do? How many tickets you're going to sell? Not just listening to a small select group of fans who are important, by the way, and they're intelligent. I don't knock them, but it's a pretty straightforward business decision. One does 800,000 buys, one does 400,000 buys. Which one are you going to go for? 400,000 because Boxing Socials fans said they wanted that one.
Not just Boxing Social, as you see it across a variety
boxing
of
sites.
boxing sites, or just on Twitter and Facebook and everything itself.
Because you follow boxing people. That's why. There's a whole other world out there. Don't forget that with social media, it's not real. And you're only influenced by the people you follow on Twitter. If you follow people who like gardening, you're going to suddenly think to yourself, wow, there is a lot of people out there that like gardening. Do you know what I mean? This is true. That's the best way to describe it, you know? So it's like, I'm just telling you, people who follow Boxing Social, they know their boxing. I know my numbers. I know this business. Trust me when I say the two fights are miles. And by the way, it wasn't like Ortiz was banging our door down. He put an article out on Boxing Scene saying, I'll fight you on December 22nd. There was never any approach. There was never any dialogue. So it wasn't like we were close and we said, no, we're going to swerve that one. It was just we always wanted to make the Chisora fight. Did we have conversations with Breazeale? A little bit. You know, conversations with Ortiz, only really about other fights that we were talking about doing. So, yeah, I understand. But I have to, you know, my job is to hit the biggest numbers possible. And I'm trying to give you the complete, honest evaluation of why. And I hope that made some kind of sense.
So do you see yourself more then as a businessman or a boxing promoter on that regard?
Same thing. Do I love the sport of boxing? 100%. Am I a businessman? 100%. I work for these fighters. It doesn't matter if I wanted the Luis Ortiz fight as a boxing fan. When I present these opportunities to the fighters and say, here's Dereck Chisora, does 800,000, makes you X million quid. Here's Luis Ortiz, does X 100,000 and does X million quid. But a lot of the hardcore fans want you to take this one. So if you want to lose 3 or 4 million quid by fighting this guy, it'd be real nice and you get a lot of respect. Mate, this ain't a sport where you get up and you jump in a pool and you do a couple of lengths. You go in there and you try and render your opponent unconscious. So don't mess around with the numbers and the facts and the opportunities that these fighters are making to make big money. And this fight is a big money fight for both guys. And it's my job. Sometimes people have the perception that I decide everything. You know, I didn't decide that Dillian wanted to fight Chisora. That we looked at the numbers for a whole load of fights and they said that's the fight. Not I said you have to fight him. This ain't the UFC. So it doesn't really matter what I think. My job is to present the numbers and make as much money for these fighters as I can. Do I love boxing? 100%. Boxing is my life. My life. But my business is also my life.
So talking from a business side, another thing which I've seen constantly coming up over social media, the pay-per-view, and the fact that we're seeing a lot more events being put on as pay-per-view, and there seems to be a lot of people complaining because it's adding up costs for this applies not just to boxing fans, just to the general public as well now. What are your thoughts with regards to the fact that we're seeing so many pay-per-view fights? Is this the way that boxing is going to go, where every fight will eventually be pay-per-view, even the next-gen shows, for example?
Yeah, no. I mean, certainly not every show going to pay-per-view, but it is a problem. You know, I did an article recently where I said pay-per-view will end in tears. And what I mean by that is there'll be other outlets trying to do pay-per-view that just don't have the resources, that can't hit the numbers. Say, mate, say so. And fighters will be essentially lied to that they'll hit these numbers or these numbers and, oh, this fight did this much on Sky, so we'll do this many. It's not going to work like that. So only the strongest and the best and the smartest and the best promotions will survive. In an ideal world, for a fan, there would be no pay-per-view. But the issue is if you've got a fight that can create, say, 500,000 buys, that's £10 million worth of revenue, right? Take off the VAT, see what goes into promotion. I don't know, call it 5 or 6 million quid. What's the max that you can get from a broadcaster for a rights fee for that kind of fight? £500,000? So you've got 5 million quid's worth of revenue or £500,000 worth of revenue. There is such a huge disparity between the two numbers, and it's only companies now like DAZN who have come into America and said, we will replace your pay-per-view revenue with rights fees. If Sky or ITV or BT or Channel 5 turned around tomorrow and said, we'll give you £5 million for Chisora Whyte, we wouldn't have to have pay-per-view, but it's not there. So again, I'm just trying to give you an honest assessment of the problem, and it's the same with Warrington and Frampton. They don't want to fight for 200 or 300 grand each. But when I say it'll end in tears, these pay-per-views on unproven outlets are going to bomb. So I don't know the answer. People getting found out, people realise it's not going to work. Maybe the fans turn around and say, I ain't buying pay-per-views anymore. And maybe it all ends. But it will only be the ones that are the quality ones. And what we're finding with pay-per-view, the numbers are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Which means, how can we look at it and say, oh, pay-per-view is dying or pay-per-view is terrible for the sport, when the numbers are consistently getting bigger? In America, the pay-per-view numbers are getting consistently smaller. An American pay-per-view is a joke. It's $85. $85. Ours is what, $25, $26. So it's still not ideal. And I can't sit here and go, pay-per-view's great for boxing. It's not. Pay-per-view's great for fighters in the UK because they're making a fortune. And by the way, fucking good luck to them as well. You want to get in there and you want to have a row with another geezer like Chisora, Hay, with Dillian Whyte with 10-ounce gloves on? No, thank you. But that is the reality of it, that the rights fees aren't there to pay these fighters millions of pounds that they want. And in many instances, they deserve.
So a clash there then, it's obviously, I'm fighting now, we've got Warrington-Frampton on the same night. You're just talking about figures and the money involved. How much is that going to impact you guys? And you've just mentioned the fact that you had to take this, well, not you didn't have to, but it made more commercial sense to take this fight ahead of Ortiz or Breazeale. So with in mind the fact that Warrington and Frampton are fighting on the same night, how much are you expecting that to impact your figures?
Not hugely, but it's not ideal. You know, someone said to me earlier, oh, is this a move to make sure their pay-per-view doesn't do great numbers? No, because we're going to lose pay-per-view subscribers to them as well. Not many, but we're still going to lose pay-per-view subscribers to them because there'll be, you know, might be Irish fans or, again, these two fights are totally different markets. Warrington-Frampton is almost like the hardcore boxing fans fight, and Whyte-Chisora is one of the best heavyweight fights we've seen, and all of Britain wants to see it. Yeah? So, in an ideal world, we wouldn't go on the 22nd, but there was no venues, no availability to go anywhere else. And we're not going to go to a 6,000-7,000 arena when we can be selling 18,000 at the O2. So how many pay-per-view buys will we lose? 20, 30,000? Something like that. So, yeah, it's not ideal, but unfortunately, when there's BT are running 2 pay-per-views in December, right? We're running a pay-per-view. This is the pay-per-view problem. So, just like any market, we want to be the best, provide the best fights, provide the best value for money, and we hope that the fan will choose us.
What can be done then to alleviate the issues for fans on the night to try and watch the fights? Is there any type of talks that could be had to maybe make sure that the events don't clash?
Yeah, we're up for that. I mean, the O2 generally has a much earlier curfew than Manchester. So perhaps we go at 10:15, 10:30, and they go at 11:15, 11:30. I'm open for that. It makes sense. You know, it's not about being Dr. Evil and, we're going to go the same night as you. We don't see that card as a major threat to our numbers. But in an ideal world, we would have gone on the 15th. But we can't get a venue. So we've made a decision to take more revenue on the gate and probably slightly less revenue on the pay-per-view, but still be winning overall by doing it on that night. 22nd is not a great night for pay-per-view. It's very close to Christmas. 15 would have been ideal, but the O2 only had the 22nd.
Now, obviously, you just mentioned it's close to Christmas and there's a lot of boxing events leading up to that. Because you seemed like you wanted to get on before this turn of year, could you have not looked at early next year in January at some point?
Whyte wants the opportunity to fight Joshua, and if the Wilder fight doesn't happen, we can't do it in January or February. The only date at the O2 is February the 2nd, which we've got, which will be another show for us. we can't wait till Feb 2nd. Joshua's fighting on April 13th. Dillian don't want to wait till January. And ultimately, this decision to go on this date is with Dillian and Chisora because they own the show. So I say we go on this date. Sky wanted to go on this date as well because they didn't want to go to another venue that didn't work. And ultimately, they decided, yes, that's a date. Now, if Dereck or Dillian would have turned around and gone, actually, we won't go the same night. It's a bit late. It's a bit close to Christmas. We'll wait till January. No one wants to wait till January. Who wants to do a pay-per-view in January? You know what I mean?
Including the January sales.
No, yeah. Very good. Yes. No is the answer.
And just to loop to some of the other cards that are coming up, just sort of Fury Wilder, just to keep it with the heavyweights. I don't suppose you managed to catch Fury on the Joe Rogan Experience for podcast?
No, I saw some clips. Very brilliant talker. And very inspirational what he's done. The best thing about Fury is that the way he talks, the fight's about to start and you think this guy is like going to just put on this unbelievable performance, exciting. But we know what he's going to do when he gets in the ring, what he always does, and that's probably the only way he can win. So, look, as a Brit, I really want Fury to win. But obviously for the Undisputed Championship, I want Wilder to win so we can get that fight on. So, we shall see.
What are the difficulties going to be if Tyson wins and trying to make...
That's the problem, because he'll have a rematch clause. Wilder will have a rematch clause. So, we won't get the chance to fight Fury just yet. So, we'll have to see.
How do you see the fight itself going?
Fury's got to spore and spoil and hold and do all the things that he's very good at and being awkward, and that's how he wins a fight. He just does it for 12 rounds and tries to get the decision.
From what you've seen and he's come back so far, do you think that he can be the similar levels and produce the similar levels that we saw against Vladimir Klitschko?
No, I don't. I think it's much too early for him. But, you know, what Fury does is quite effective against a robotic fighter like Klitschko, but not against an unconventional fighter or an orthodox fighter like Wilder. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if after 2 or 3 rounds, Wilder was just following him around, but I think he will catch up with him.
I was going to say, we saw Lawrence Okole's flown out to do some sparring with Tyson. Is that the exact type of sparring which you think Tyson needs then because of Lawrence's style?
Yes, I mean, you know, Lawrence has very long arms, long levers, very rigid sometimes, and, you know, can hit very hard. So I think that's very good sparring for Tyson.
And we're less than 2 weeks away now for Usyk Bellew. How's Tony looking?
Brilliant. Fitter than I've ever seen him, more focused than I've ever seen him. I think Usyk Bellew is the fight of 2018. I'm so excited. We talked earlier about boxing and being a fan. I'm so excited for that as a fan because I don't know what's going to happen. I'm excited to see Usyk that close up. You know, can Tony match him for shaking fight? Can he trade with him? All these questions. I don't have a clue. I know Tony's looking brilliant. He's confident. He's punching harder than ever. But we also know Usyk's a genius. So that's a huge fight. I can't wait next Saturday.
And finally, there's a lot circulating at the minute on social media about Khan-Brook and Amir Khan with regards to Khan wants for they've agreed 147 even, but Amir Khan wants for £10 rehydration limit. He put a tweet out effectively backing that up, saying because Brook had fought under IBF rules previously that he wanted it installed and it shouldn't be anything new for Cal. Is that going to be something which will decide the fight if we have a rehydration clause? It's
something that Amir wants, I believe, speaking to him this week, and I'm not sure Kel will agree with it. So we're going to have talks very soon to see if that is a deal breaker, because you know Amir's argument will be, you've done it before, you know, what's the problem? And Kel's will be, yeah, but it's not for an IBF world title. So you're asking me to make 147. So, all right, I'll do that. But now you're asking me to weigh in the next day. But there are going to be things that Kel has to do in this fight and in these negotiations that he won't like to get this fight. The rehydration clause could be one that could break the deal.
Do you think there's got to be more compromises from Khan-Brook's side than what there will be from Amir's side?
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you juggle that? And I can imagine
it's up to Kel. You know, it's not a case of me being loyal either way. We will go in and try and find a deal that Amir will accept. Then we take it to Kel. And if Amir wants a rehydration clause, you know, I can say to Amir, I don't think that's fair. He could tell me to fuck off. that's how he take the fight, and then it's up to Kel. So ultimately, it's going to be Kel's decision if he adheres to the clauses that Amir wants to be put into this fight.
And finally, if it happens, when next year do you predict it?
March. Early March. That's what we're gunning for right now.
Well, Eddie, thank you for speaking to Boxing Social.
Cheers, mate.